The anime talks mainly about the group named the Jaegers, who aim at killing vampires. One of the most special characters among them is called Yuli, a werewolf whom his village got destroyed by the vampires, and since he was a small kid, he promised himself to fight them till his last breath. He's also named Sirius. Yuli and his team were called to start investigating the suspicious abduction of one of the most dangerous criminals in Japan named Kuretake, as they are well known by their good work. When they arrive to the city, Nao hosts them in a mansion and informs Willard, the leader of the group, about a terrorist organization called Hyako Party. On the other side, Kuretake was kidnapped by Agatha, the royal vampire, who take him to another prison where she tortures him. The police do their best and explain the situation to the team, and after analyzing what they start seeing, since the criminal got kidnapped, they found out that someone kidnapped him and made it appear like if it was a prison break. Agatha keeps assassinating people she wants and using Kuretake as a decoy in order to make it the whole city thinks it is Kuretake who does that instead. But Yuli and his team discovered her, and when he tells her that, she tries to run away in a car, so he keeps following her. The whole team rides the car and they go behind her. Yuli targets her from high place. He reaches the car and kills her driver. But when he starts to fight her, he discovers that she's a noble. He takes it too far when she falls off the bridge, and without thinking, he jumps to continue what he already started, making her also realize that he's serious, but Mikael shoots him. The boy opens his eyes in bed, while the doctor Hanada nurses him. Soon after, his friends come and they blame him for doing such a dangerous moves, and they ask him to work with the team as they are supposed to be a team. Meanwhile, Agatha takes the necessary treatments and promises her leader, Kishner, that she will take her revenge. Later that night, when Philip calls the doctor for dinner, he sees how he works on an artificial heart, so he informs Willard. In the next morning, the doctor reveals to his daughter that he has finished the work on that medical machine which helps the heart to beat without a body. And at night, Agatha and a group of vampires break into the house to take the machine. So Yuli and Philip start attacking them, but they fail in saving the doctor's life because Agatha bites his neck and turns him into a monster. Philip takes the girl away, but her father keeps following them. And when Yuli stabs Agatha, he pierces the doctor's neck to save the daughter. Only a few seconds before Agatha dies, she informs the Sirius that she's too late to get the Ark. Things seems to be done when an explosion happened in the other side of the house. Yuli flies to the roof in order to get a better view, and he gets surprised when he sees his brother Michael. Yuli recalls some memories of his childhood when he lived with his brother Michael, and when they went to hunt together, he failed after sneezing, so his brother did it, and the whole village was happy because that deer they bought with them will feed them for at least a week. The village leader reveals them because of the disappearance of Sirius' Ark, they will also disappear. Yuli asks his mother whether the Ark was destroyed, but she told him it just went away. Few minutes later, Willard comes and knocks the door. They start talking about what happened to the doctor, and then the boy reveals that his parents died in the same way when a group of vampires killed them. And then he explains how they left their village after being destroyed by the vampires. Michael faced them alone, but Yuli fell down the edge, and that's how they couldn't see each other again until that day when the doctor got killed. Michael turned to be a vampire since that day, while his little brother decided to take his revenge and be a vampire's hunter. He informs Willard that the vampires, including his brother, are in Japan looking for the Ark, and he sadly declares that he cannot kill his brother. And then he recalls how he met Willard, who decided at that time to teach him how to be a hunter. And the next day, the vampires decide to stop helping the Hyako Party financially because of their bad actions in the last days, so the leader gets angry and kills the messenger. After that, he plans to attack them all. In a meeting, the Jaegers understand that the Hyako Party stopped attacking doctors and scientists because they got all what they need. Then they decide to split into groups to watch both Hyako Party and Alma Company. Later at night, Krishna demonstrates his new weapon to the general, which seems to be so powerful, and he leaves them all in shock. Yuli and Dorothea went to the train station, and Yuko follows them because she loves the boy and she feels jealous. But in the last minute, before the train starts moving, Yuli smells blood, and after seeing the military transporting the weapon, they chase the train to another destination. On the new train, the girl decides to go and look for the vampires while Yuli stays in his place. Right as she leaves, Michael comes and sits in front of his brother. Yuyu finally touches his brother's face. Michael reveals that as long as they survive, a day will come where they will be obliged to kill each other. So he just advises him to quit his mission of taking revenge because he's too weak for it. Suddenly, Hyako's party stops the train, the thing which makes Krishna and Michael disappear, but they leave Klarven behind with a new weapon, and he managed killing the leader of the Hyako Party and spreading fear. Willard and the two Jaegers realize that the train has been hijacked, so they decide to go after it, and they discover that it's going to be drilled. So they join Dorothea trying to stop the train before the disaster, while Yuli runs to fight the weapon. It smells like vampires, but it's not one of them. As the fight starts, the crazy doctor loses control of the machine, and it starts fighting on its own. The fight continues until Michael appears, so the machine starts following him instead. And on top of the train, that vampire destroyed the weapon. Right after that, the train rails and Michael stands in front of his brother to tell him that if he ever starts acting furiously, then he has to kill him. He talks also about the Ark of Sirius. In the next day, Kushner and Michael received a letter saying that the Ark is not in Japan, so they have to leave. Before that, Kushner decides to kill the Jaegers. In the mansion, Willard and Yuli having a conversation about what happened in the train, so the boy informs him that his brother knows more about the Ark. That's why Kushner considers him as a very important servant. Willard asks Yuli to stop being a Jaeger, but he refuses because revenge is all what he wants to spend his life doing. Later, Iba sits with Jeru, Willard's informant, and tells him everything. As the informant goes back to his bar, the vampires attack him. Willard visits the bar later that night and finds Jeru injured, but before he takes his last breath, he tells him that the two vampires are there and he gives him a note. So Willard attacks back and kills them. Right after that, he calls the Jaegers and asks them to prepare themselves for a big fight with the vampires. Yuli tells No's daughter to protect her father as she masters using the sword, and while he waits for the attack with Philip, his friends reveal that he forgives him for what happened long time ago when Sirius killed his family. Then the vampires break in and they attack furiously, but they stop them until something unexpected happens when Kushner appears. Yuli starts fighting the leader when his brother crashes through the window and bites Philip, which means that will be transformed soon to a vampire. The reinforcements start to arrive. Meanwhile, Yuli fights his brother, who reveals that the Sirius Ark is missing because their father took it 10 years ago. Then he asks him to survive because he's the only one who survived from the vampires. Kushner tries to run away after realizing the army is coming for help, but Willard spots him on the roof and they start fighting each other. As soon as the fight began, Yuli arrives and before stop fighting Kushner, reveals an old story taking him to the day of attacking the village. He confesses that he was the planner of the attack and he destroyed his village, but also he reveals Willard's biggest secret. He also was involved in the attack and he helped the vampires to find the village. Enraged, the Jaeger loses control on himself and his eyes start shining more than ever. He becomes a werewolf and starts fighting Kushner. After getting stabbed, he breaks the sword and kills one of the biggest vampires of all time. Then he confronts his leader and the guy who saved him, and when he was a boy, he asks him this time to know everything as he's the only survivor. Willard tells him everything he knows about the Ark, and that it contains all sort of technology and science, which is the reason why the vampires want it so bad. But then he asks also that he might be late if he really wants to get it before the vampires, because their true leader is not Kushner, it's actually Yevgraf. The army also won that ship, as it will be a good help in the next wars. Later that day, Willard tells the Jaegers that they will not be chasing the chip anymore, and the army is going to a place that is called Sklen. However, Yuli decides to go alone. And the next morning, Michael and the crazy Dr. Klarvin go to meet the great vampire Yevgraf in a cave where the Ark is probably located. The doctor gets excited, but only Michael is allowed to get in. The vampire reveals that Michael's father hid the Ark in the cave, but that made him lose his life, and the only two guys in the world can pass through the barrier, Yuli and his brother. Yuli arrives to Sklen, and while he was choosing a dish from the menu of a simple restaurant, a Jaeger called Bishop appears and sits on the same table, asking the boy to keep calm. At the same time, Michael tried to pass through the barrier, which was made by his father, but he barely makes 3 steps. So Yevgraf asks him to step back, but he refuses and attacks him. When he almost cuts his face, Yevgraf stops him and wonders whether the younger son will be able to get the Ark. Back to the restaurant, where Bishop convinced the boy to work as a team, as they both have the same goal, which is to take revenge from Yevgraf. And they both go to meet an informant who will show them the way to the chip. Out of the cave, the vampire gets Michael out, and the doctor begs to get his chance and to use his science to get through the barrier, but no one listens to what he says. On their way to the informant, Yuli asks his partner if he is a vampire because he smells like them, but he replies that he worked in killing them for so long, that's why he smells like that. Then suddenly they hear a gunshot, and they quickly realize that there is an old man trying to protect himself from a vampire's attack. Yuli jumps out of the car and saves the old man, and finds out that there are 2 vampires, Tamara and Larissa, who didn't stop talking about his family. He starts getting mad and attacks them enraged. But when he faces Tamara, he hesitates killing her, after looking at her face, so the 2 sisters fly away promising to come back again. However, when the old man heard what the 2 vampires said and knew that Yuli is Alexei's son, he points his gun at him and asks why he's there. The boy seems to be surprised and insists to know how did the old man knew his father, so he explains to him that they were friends in the past. But one day, Alexei disappeared with the Ark, so the old man followed him to Sklen, where the father confessed that no one will ever get the Ark. The boy keeps asking more and more questions, but the man asks them to leave. Then Bishop tells him that the vampires predicted all his moves and they didn't kill his father's friend in purpose just to attract him. Tamara and Larissa explain to their master how did they play with Yuli, and then Michael realizes that his brother will be used to help the vampires get the Ark. Back to Yuli and Bishop when they decide to go to eat something. Coincidence, Nao's daughter with Iba. Iba tells them that he came to the city to look for Mamoru Asakasa, who's an old soldier that was sent to look for the chip since a long time, but he didn't come back since that day. Bishop recognized the man in the autograph, as is the old man they met in the woods last night, in order to know more detail. And the next morning, they go to see him. but he refuses to say anything, and he says that he promised his friend Alexei to hide all the information he knows about the Ark, but then Yuli informs him that he's the only survivor, Sirius, so he has the right to know in order to get to the chip before the vampires do. The old man starts talking in tears and reveals that Alexei made him promise to keep everything a secret, that his father sealed the Ark, so he gives them the map, and they leave after thanking him for being a very good friend. And the next day, Yuli and Bishop go alone to the Ark, but Eva follows them because he still remembers the location. With only meters are left to reach the final destination, Yuli gets surprised by seeing the crazy doctor with his army of artificial soldiers. Meanwhile, the other Jaegers visited the old village of Sirius. Willard finds an eye and decides to take him with him. He reveals that Yuli might need her right now, so they fly to the town where the boy is. Klaveren attacks Bishop without any mercy and showing off his scientific knowledge. Then while he attacks the two guys, he says something about a dangerous disease that starts killing the vampires. And right after the crazy doctor fell off the edge and they reached the cave where the chip was hidden. When Yuli puts his feet in the red liquid, the same thing happened to his brother happens again. He feels like his fathers don't want him to get closer, but he does it anyway. Then he gets engulfed by the lake and his werewolf powers get released. When he opens his eyes, he sees his father's memories and understands that his father sealed the Ark in order to protect his village and his loving ones. He sacrificed his life so that Sirius' family will live. After seeing the memories, he finally meets his father, who tells him to leave because he doesn't want him to suffer the same way he did to protect the Ark. But the son convinces his father and takes the Ark. Releasing a beam of light, when the vampire realizes that the Ark has been released, Yevgraf puts a spell on Michael and orders him to kill his brother and to bring the Ark. Yuli and Bishop on their way out, they meet Iba and Nao's daughter, who tells them that Yevgraf is waiting for them outside the cave. When Yuli decides to go and face his enemy, Bishop shows his true intention and points his gun at Yuko and asks to get the Ark. Then Yuli confesses that he agreed to work with him even when he knew that he's a vampire, because he saw the sadness and guilt in his eyes. Then Bishop says that he wants the deceased to kill all the vampires because he was a normal person and they made him lose his old life. And then they decide to work together again to stop the vampire. Shortly after, Michael comes in mind control and he does what his master asks him to do. He stabs his brother and takes the Ark. He rubs into his blood and hands it to Tamara. She flies to take it to Yevgraf, so Bishop starts by killing her sister Larissa, and then he jumps to get the Ark from Tamara. On the other side, Yuli continues fighting his brother, but he hesitates hitting him. And luckily, Michael gains back his sense and starts blaming Yuli for coming to such a dangerous place. Then he begins coughing and bleeding. He got the disease apparently, and he confesses that he infected himself in order to infect the others and kill them all, even Yevgraf. Bishop manages to take the Ark back from Tamara, but then he finds himself face to face with Yevgraf, who wants the shiny thing to be in his hands, so he kills him and takes it easily. Then Yuli arrives with his sick brother and attacks Yevgraf, but the vampire flies to his ship. The other soldiers get ready to fight Yuli and his friends, but a plane that belongs to Willard appears in the sky. The Jaegers arrive to save their friend, and they start shooting the enemies out. Meanwhile, Michael flies to the chip as well. Yevgraf swallowed the Ark, promises to change the world, and he begins to transform. Yuli and his brother enter the ship, and they realize that Yevgraf has consumed the Ark, and he reveals that he will not use his powers to heal the other vampires, and he's only looking for the noble ones. Then he bites a sick vampire, but he kills him, which means that he's normal one. Then he approaches to bite Tamara to test her blood, as she's noble, but Yuli stops him. Then suddenly the Ark starts affecting his body and changes him to a monster that starts attacking the vampires around him, including Michael. Then Willard arrives and hands Yuli the secret counterpart of the Ark, which will help him to control the one that Yevgraf ate. Then he joins his brother in the fight and realizes that Yevgraf has the ability to regenerate his organ. After that, the battle begins to be tough and the power of the Ark starts destroying Yevgraf's body. Michael manages to take the Ark from his eye, and sooner after that Yuli stabs the vampire and cuts his head, so he turns into ash. After killing the greatest vampire, Michael dies in his brother's arm after giving back the Ark, but Yuli promises to change the world to be a better place and tells Willard that if the power of the Ark will ever change his behavior to the worst, then he must kill him. We reached the end of this great anime. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much. See you next time with another anime. Take care!